I may not have got to the pros despite hitting my sports flakes, but I'm still the fastest of all my softball buddies to the bar stool.
Hey everyone, this is Will O'Toole welcoming you to another edition of Park Ridge Sports History. Today I thought we'd have a little fun and do something novel, and that is talk about the Wheaties box and all the athletes. And I was surprised when I was doing some research on this. Some of the non-athletes that have graced the cover of or the box cover of the Wheaties cereal over the last, basically since the 1930s, almost 100 years. So I thought we'd have fun with that. And of course, if you're thinking about many of the players, like the Michael Jordans, the Pete Roses, yes, they have been a subject of the cover, Muhammad Ali and others. And then there are some ones that I was not aware of, and so I'd like to delve into those as well. But first off, let's talk as we get to March Madness. And of course, my Seton Hall team won a big game against Villanova the other night. Probably, but I am not securing it with a 99.9%. Probably, though, securing themselves of an NCAA bid. They still have DePaul to get through this weekend. And then, of course, the torturous Big East tournament, which has become probably my personal favorite part of the year, more than the NCAA. I don't know what it is. You get those Big East teams in Madison Square Garden, and as long as my team is still in it, boy, it makes it for exciting, nail-biting experience. And it's a great way to spend the middle of March. And sometimes I'm always rooting for snow, so there's a reason to kind of stay in and watch all of the games, not just one or two. And what I do love about March Madness, with it kicking off this week and next, actually there's a couple of games played or conference tournaments played already, is the fact that you can come home and see some games on TV at, let's say, 1, or actually at noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, all the way throughout the entire night. And that's what I love about the NCAA tournament, is that you can come home on at least that Thursday and Friday of the first week and watch games continuously from noontime, lunchtime, all the way until midnight. And it does make it for an exciting and a couple of weeks. It does get you through the last bits of winter. And then, of course, basically the March Madness tournament, which now ends in April, really used to be on the cusp of opening day. Now they kind of interlock. And so you can go right from the NCAA Final Four right to opening day of baseball. And then it feels like, wow, summer is here. No matter how cold the weather is in, let's say, April or even May, you know you've gotten to the end of the school year or the end of winter, and really the nice days of hopefully spring, maybe a warming trend in spring, and of course summer. And then, man, it is a permanent Saturday afternoon listening to the games on the radio. That's how summer feels for me. Just, it's like one long day. That's why I've always said my two favorite days of the year are Christmas and summer, because they do feel like one day. Anyway, let's get to this. I was doing a little study on Wheaties, just very quick, because this is going to be a very short show. Usually I go about 40 minutes. I'd like to go about 30. And what I found amazing with the Wheaties, I always thought this when I was a kid, and I know if you grew up in the 60s, late 50s, Wheaties did have a cover, but it was always a generic sports hero, usually, let's say, a track star, an illustration of a track star getting to the finish line, a baseball player pitching a ball or hitting a ball, football player kicking it, and all the rest of it. I never thought that they had actual athletes on the Wheaties box until, let's say, the late 70s and then early 80s, and then it became almost like the SI cover. Who was going to make the next cover of Wheaties? But I was really surprised, and so I'm glad I did a little bit of study on this. Now, albeit I didn't do an in-depth, but I wanted to make this just a fun thing. Here's what I mean. Top of the page there, or box there is the Wheaties cover. And you can see it's really just, it's a nice illustration, believe me. Great drawing in my own, probably pen and ink and watercolor of, let's say, a tight end or a wide receiver catching a football in action, of course. But I didn't realize this. Wheaties then had these covers. Now, I don't know whether, and I am in a quandary over this. I don't know whether the individual athletes graced the cover or they made the Wheaties box look just like this. I know this, and I'm going to go into Bob Feller in a little bit. But Bob Feller made a Wheaties box along with the Minnesota Twins. I do remember this, 1991, them making the cover. One box I do remember that I actually had a hold of and kept was the Texas Western. It was and these were it wasn't Texas, it wasn't like Wheaties in 1966 that decided to put the Texas Western basketball team on the Wheaties box. Back then, I'm telling you, they had these kind of covers with the football, the baseball, the hockey player, and all the rest of it. It wasn't until later on that they started doing almost commemorative Wheaties boxes. But anyway, the one was about the movie Glory Road. So Wheaties decided to put on their box the Texas Western basketball team of 1966. And of course, they were the first all black team to start the NCAA Final Four championship game. And of course, they defeated the University of Kentucky. And there's a really good movie out on it. I think it's Glory Road. I'm pretty sure that's the full name of it, but it's the story of that 66 team and Don Haskins, who is known as, he always seemed to be, as he grew older, like an old curmudgeon. But as he grew, literally and figuratively, in both legend and physical size, he became known as the Bear. And he was a lovable bear and a great coach. And of course, never won another title, but he does stop maybe the winning streak of UCLA. And to be able to do what he did back then, anytime you win a tournament, it's remarkable. But that team was surprisingly, I think, 28-1. They only lost one game during the regular season. Of course, went through the NCAA tournament. I think they only had 4 games to win, but it was still, it's still nerve-wracking to have a single elimination on your mind as you're trying to make your way through the March Madness, which is why it's such an exciting time of year. But anyway, Bob Feller made the cover. I'll get back to him because I do want to show you this. Lou Gehrig, back in 1934, actually was the first cover. Now, to be fair, and I didn't do any further research on this, I don't know whether this picture of Gehrig is what graced the first cover of the Wheaties box, or if this was on the back of the Wheaties cover. According, and I'm using Wikipedia as a source here, Lou Gehrig made the first, it seems like the first cover of Wheaties, 1934, and then it looks like they did, nostalgic types of, or collector's items. I'll even call them collector's items. He graced the cover in 92 and then in 99. But Lou Gehrig, enough said. Man who fell victim to Lou Gehrig's disease. I'm not going to pronounce the word right now. It's a tongue twister for me. The Iron Horse, Lou Gehrig, was really towards the end of his career, obviously, but age 37 was racked by this disease. And we as baseball fans, and of course I never saw him play, but we as baseball fans were robbed of, let's say, maybe 2 or 3 more years of the great Lou Gehrig. And who knows? He ended his career with 493 home runs, probably would have finished with 500 and more, and would have just built onto his legendary stats. Look, I never mind talking about Gehrig. He happens to be probably one of my top 5 players of all time. In fact, we've done a number of shows on the greatness of Gehrig, and I've even pointed out how consistent he was, and not just with driving in over 100 runs, but in many cases averaging over 130 runs a year. Incredible. And of course, hitting 340, well over 300 for his career. Just a great, great player. Columbia Lou Gehrig, and he was on the first cover. The second one was Jimmy Fox, nicknamed the Beast, and I love this one, Double X. Of course, he played with the Red Sox and the Philadelphia A's, and was a mainstay of both teams. I don't know whether I ever showed this picture, but I found a book years ago on Jimmy Fox, and this is what I remember. Anyway, Fox made the cover. Wait a minute, let me just tell you what year Fox made the cover. Fox was on the cover in 1934, the year following his Triple Crown. Remember, there were actually 2 Triple Crown winners in 1933. One, obviously, American League, one National, and they were both from Philadelphia. For the Philadelphia Phillies, it was Chuck Klein, and for the Philadelphia A's, of course, it was Jimmy Fox. He was on those great late 20s and early 30s Philadelphia teams, and then, of course, Connie Mack got rid of all his great players, kind of like Charles Finley getting rid of all his players when he was out in Oakland. It's amazing how history for some franchises seems to be cyclical. Got rid of all his great players. And for Fox, he finished with 536 home runs, and just a great player. But, of course, Michael Jordan made the cover a number of times. And with him, of course, you have Jordan dunking this way. He's got him dunking this way. He's got him doing this. But I am sure that Wheaties enjoyed putting him on the cover, just like SI enjoyed putting Air Jordan on the cover of their weekly magazine. It did probably blow up business. Probably when sales went through the roof. Mary Lou Retton graced the Wheaties cover after her unbelievable gold medals in gymnastics in the '84 Olympics, in 1984 in Los Angeles. And, of course, she became America's sweetheart. And, of course, Wheaties actually had a number of women. Well, first of all, I just want to tell you this. Ellsworth Vines was a great tennis player. I was unaware of him until I was doing the study, which is why, again, a shout out to the ever patient Howard Fredericks, who puts up with my crazy shows, crazy ideas, and all the rest of it, and always helps produce the show. But why I appreciate doing the show so much is that it does give me a chance to do other research on other sports that either I'm not familiar with or I don't follow as much as I do baseball and football and basketball. And Ellsworth Vines was a great tennis player, obviously in the 30s, won a number of Grand Slams in the tennis world. And of course, the Grand Slam is the Australian, the French, the U.S. Open in Flushing, and of course, Wimbledon. Probably of the 4, you always want to win Wimbledon of the 4. And, he graced the Wheaties box in 1934. And then it was an aviator. I'm going to say this. Eleanor Smith was the first female ever depicted. Now, she was an aviator. Of course, we all know. But Eleanor Smith, and this is why I said she kind of reminds you of, and I don't have a picture of her, kind of reminds you of Amelia Earhart. She was once known as the Flying Flapper of Freeport. Try saying that 10 times or even 3 times fast. I can't even say it once. But she made the cover of the Wheaties box back in 1934. And then, interestingly enough, a first married couple of aviators by the name of Martin and Osa Johnson made the cover. And then we get back to baseball with Dizzy Dean in baseball. And, of course, Dizzy Dean, don't have one of his, but you know what? I'll show one of his contemporaries. Obviously, I'm going to get into Bob Feller in a little bit. But Dizzy Dean, of course, is the last National League pitcher to win 30 games. He and his brother Paul, and that used to be kind of a famous quote way back when, Dizzy Dean and the Gas House Gang, me and Paul. Dizzy and Paul combined for 53 wins that year. Dizzy winning over 30 and Paul Dean winning 19 games for those great Gas House Gang baseball teams with Pepper Martin. I think Leo DeRocher might have been on that team as well. It's pretty interesting. You know what? Maybe what I should do, and I always threaten you guys out there with doing that, are some of the great nicknames in sports history and break it down to not just individual nicknames, but also team nicknames. Because I've never done one on defenses in the NFL, but in the 60s, there are some great nicknames for the NFL. And of course, now you guys are having me go off on a tailspin here. Here's a great cover. Now, obviously, just judging by the border, I know that this was not a Wheaties box based on when Russell was playing for the Celtics. It's not even from the late 60s when he became the coach and the center for the Celtics. But this is probably one of those tribute ones that they did in the 80s and probably 90s. But what I do like, it's a great picture. And just goes to show you how different the ball players in the NBA were in the 1960s and 70s, even in the late 50s. Russell, of course, you could argue along with Yogi Berra. Well, you would say that they were the two greatest winners in American sports history. Of course, Berra with the great Yankee teams, but he also picked up a number of rings with the Mets in '69 and some pennants with both the Mets and the Yankees, and a couple of World Series rings as well, I believe, with the Yankees as a coach. Right, he was on the '77 and '78 teams, and I remember doing an article on who was the greatest winner of all time. Was it Russell or Yogi Berra? Technically, you would probably consider Russell the greatest winner of all times, because I kind of put a little loophole with mine. I had Yogi qualifying it this way, also as an assistant coach for the Yankees. But really, when you think about it, Russell won in high school. He won in college, not once, but back-to-back on an unbeaten San Francisco team. Then he goes to the Celtics, but before he plays for the Celtics, goes to Australia, Melbourne, Australia, to play in the December Olympics that year, and brings back a Olympic championship. And then he wins an NBA title. And as a buddy of mine at work said, I think he might be the only player to be able to say he won 3 championships in one calendar year or one seasonal year, because he got San Francisco, then he goes to the Olympics for the United States, and then, of course, with the Boston Celtics. Pretty amazing. And, of course, there'll always be debate of who you like, Russell or Chamberlain. Both. Here's what's unfair with that debate. They were totally different players as well. Russell, of course, was seen more as a defensive specialist, and, of course, Chamberlain was the offensive machine for those great Philadelphia teams and, of course, the LA Laker teams. And remember, we just celebrated March 2nd, 1962. Wow. That's 62 years ago of Chamberlain scoring 100 points in Hershey Park, Pennsylvania, against the New York Knicks. I was just talking about that the other day. But that debate is out. Me, personally, I'll take both. But probably, I hate saying this because I was a huge Chamberlain fan. I would probably have to, and I've told my buddy this, I would probably go with Russell over Chamberlain. Only because in head-to-head, Russell beat Chamberlain. Now, everyone always talks about Russell having all the Hall of Fame players, but you got to remember, Chamberlain played with West. He played with Elgin Baylor, played with a number of good to great players as well. And I don't know whether Russell, you could argue, did he make his fellow teammates into Hall of Famers? And would they have been Hall of Famers on other teams? Those are the fun debates that you have when you are sitting at a bar, having a couple of brews after a game, and just talking all things sports. Okay. Now, here's something I found online, and it's new Wheaties with a free All-American sports fitness tester. I have no clue what that is. Probably it takes your weight and height. And for me, it would probably tell me I'm fat. I'm overweight and should be losing weight. But if you can it is so typical, though. The look, obviously the great illustration, but it's the look. And this is 1960s artwork. and advertising, maybe even early 70s, but more like the 1960s and even probably late 50s, of the guy holding out a slide rule. That's really all that is, for a free, probably in the box. And I'm telling you right now, Wheaties, here was the argument. I loved Wheaties. I know everyone always said they were stale flakes and stuff. I used to I could eat a whole box of Wheaties at one sitting, but I just loved, this is really a pretty cool picture. Them all jumping on each other. And of course, here's Wheaties. And on the side, this is the whole kernel of wheat in every Wheaties flake. Here's the scientific reason, and the health reason, nutritious reason of why you should buy Wheaties. You're not buying. Oh, and by the way, I didn't even realize this until I'm looking at it. Here's a generic kicker punting the ball, which you don't see. But again, got to be honest with you, I do love the drawings. It's not what I do, obviously. They're tremendous works, especially Bob Feller, all right, who was a great pitcher. Listen, let me just do Bob Feller here, just to give you an idea how great he was. And he was on the cover. So Dean made the cover in 1935. Ready for this? After Dean, it was Babe Didrikson, all right, the golfer. Jane Fonce, an Olympic diver. So this is probably the 34 Olympics, okay? Benny Friedman for football. Did not know who he was. I'll spend some time with the other guys. Of course, Jesse Owens, Kit Klein for speed skating. And then after they have a myriad of sports, and of course, Wilbur Shaw for auto racing. I did hear of him. Could I tell you anything about him? No. But he's the first auto racer to grace the cover in 1936. Then it's all baseball. Ready? Earl Averill, Buck Jordan, Lefty Gomez, Mel Ott, Cecil Travis, and of course, I don't know, my brother Ed is out there. He knows that Cecil Travis was the runner-up to Ted Williams when Williams hit 406 in 1941. How would you like to hit? I think Travis hit 356 in 1951. And not only did he finish second in the batting title, he does have a batting average lifetime of, and I'm sorry, I did this, 314. And he was playing for the Senators in 1941. Ready for this? He's in the Georgia Hall of Fame. I didn't realize he was from Georgia. Of course, they don't have it here. Made the All-Star team, All-Star. Oh, okay. Yeah, he did. He actually hit 359 to Ted Williams' 406 in 1941. So imagine finishing 47 points behind. And you hit 359 and you still finish second. I mean, how many guys, any other year, I guarantee you, he probably would have won 70% of the batting titles. He decides in 1941 to hit 359 and to finish 47 points behind Ted Williams for the batting title. I mean, that's incredible. But of course, he makes the cover of Wheaties as well. And then, of course, you have the first basketball player to make it was a guy by the name of Rob Kessler, who played at the University of Indiana. I don't have a picture of him, but I will show you another basketball player. And this is a Seton Hall guy, Bob Davies, who, of course, is in the all-time great Seton Hall of Fame. Bob Davies is right here. And I believe All-American guard in the 50s. I think he might have led either in points per game or assists, but he was known as a great guard. But Robert Kessler was a great basketball player in the Big Ten at the University of Indiana, and I think he played in the NBA. And, of course, 1936, you get Jesse Owens. And, of course, Wheaties goes back to track and field or an Olympic event. Kit Klein for speed skating, Wilbur Shaw. And then, like I said, it's Earl Averill, Buck Jordan, Lefty Gomez, Mel Ott. 1937 is Cecil Travis, 4 years before he finished second to the Splendid Splinter. Hal Trotsky, Bob Feller, and of course that was what I wanted to show you here. You know, I never spend too much time on Feller. Let me just do him real quick. But Bullet Bob Feller, of course, from Van Meter, Iowa, a a war hero during World War II. He does become a broadcaster. He was on those great 50s Indian teams. Ready for this? He won 266 games, 162 losses, 3.25 ERA. He's got a 63.5 WAR. The reason I mentioned WAR is that I can show you guys that weren't of the talent of some of these other players that are Hall of Famers, and yet their WAR is almost close to, if not better. And you sit there and you just ponder how to figure out the WAR, because it is really kind of a frustrating stat. I know, as I've said on this show before, and Howard and I have talked about it, we know that they're trying to get a better assessment of players, mostly of players that, you wonder about, or you think that they're cusp players. Not the Willie Mays, not the Babe Ruths, not the Lou Gehrig's, not the Hank Aaron's, but the other players that you kind of say like tweeners. And I'm not even talking about Lou Brock, but I'm talking about players like Dick Allen. Where are they in the pantheon of players? Of course, he's not even in the Hall of Fame, and yet his WAR is much higher than some Hall of Famers. That's the frustrating thing about it. And it's not even like you say, well, these are contemporaries of Dick Allen, or they just don't have the numbers of Dick Allen. It's a very frustrating. WAR is a very frustrating formula to figure out. Do I appreciate it? Yes, I do. Being a stats guy, I love anything that can try to assess players in more detail and in context of their times and the teams that they played for and all the rest of it. Let me just run down this, but nevertheless, I have problems with WAR. All right, age 19, Cleveland. He actually appeared with Cleveland at age 17. Did not know that. And really, 17 and 18 years of age, and 36 and 37. He actually won 14 games for the Indians and lost 10. And then he's up for good at age 19. He wins 17 games, 11 losses. Does have a 4.08 ERA, but you got to remember the 30s were and still remain the highest offensive decade in the history of baseball. Even with the DH, it doesn't. The DH doesn't approach in any of the decades. Doesn't approach what Major League Baseball was like in the 30s in terms of offense. So he's 24-9, 27-11, and 25-13 in 1941 before he volunteers and goes off to the service. He was in the Navy, but in those 3 years, age 20, 21, 22, he won 76 games. He won and only lost 33, basically almost on a 2-to-1 basis. Comes back in 1945, gets into 9 games and goes 5-3. Unbelievable, with a shutout and an ERA of 2.50. So he comes back from the war. I'm not saying he didn't play, let's say, in camp and all the rest of it, because I know that was all about that. But nevertheless, you're not playing against all major leaguers. You might be playing against some major leaguers. You might be playing against some minor leaguers, but it's not your full-time job. He was there. His full-time job was protecting us, America, from the forces of evil. So to go 5-3 in 1945 with Cleveland, pretty remarkable, with a 2.50 ERA. And then 46, 47, 48. Ready for this? He doesn't win 20 all three, but he wins 26, 20, and 19. So basically he won over 60 games for those three Indian teams while losing only 41. Really a winning record that's better than 600. Pretty good. Then 15-14 in 1949, 16-11 in 1950 makes the All-Star team. All right, his ERAs aren't, under 3, but he's 22-8 in 1951, leads the league in winning percentage with 733, ERA 3.5. But he's doing enough. He's got to be doing something right on the mound to win 22 games. That's my whole problem with guys who really want to get rid of wins. They don't want to get rid of saves. They just want to get rid of wins by a pitcher. They don't think it's that telling. Yet they want to keep saves or holds. And I say to you this, the pitcher's got to be darn good to win 22 games. He's got to be out there even with his worst stuff on the day, and probably through grit, determination, experience, and just overall just perseverance is able to win those games like 6-5 and 5-4. And maybe he does have a gaudy ERA, of let's say 3.5 like Feller had, but he probably does enough for his team, or he gets out of that potential inning where he had maybe the bases loaded, and if he surrenders that run, could just break open the game for the opposition, and yet he's able to bear down, allow his team to get out of that inning, maybe score a couple of runs, maybe give up maybe one or two other runs in the game, but win the game 6-5 or 8-7. He's still doing his job. All right. That's my little editorial. So Feller goes 9-13, 10-7, 13-3, and between age 36 and 37, he loses 8 of his last 12 decisions. But he finishes 266, 162, 6.21 ERA. It's a shame because in 54, the great Indian team that won all those games, he only won 13 of 16 decisions. And of course, in 48, when the Indians won, he goes 19-15. So kind of okay years in the Indians' great years. I hate that personally. I love when the Hall of Famer has his greatest year in the year that the team really puts it together and wins the championship. Feller was a very opinionated pitcher as he got older and broadcaster, but many of the things he talks about, it was not where he complained but wasn't able to do it. He was a put up and you would shut up type of pitcher. Listen, if I can say that pitcher should throw 300 innings, he did it. In fact, he did it 3 times in his career. Actually, ready for this? He threw 296, 320, 343. Then, of course, the War years come in, comes back, throws 72 innings, which is really out of 9 starts. That's 8 innings that you're throwing every game. Then throws 371, 299, 280, 211, 247, 249. So the guy could flat out pitch, and he was an innings eater for a starting staff, which was great. Okay? A great starting staff with Mike Garcia and Bob Lemon. And of course, Bob Feller. And then let's just see. Do I have anybody else here? I'm going to do one other Wheaties box. Let's just see. After Feller. Oh, here's the guy. And you know what? I think I'll spend a little time with this fella next week. Lou Fett was a pitcher. And I am sure I'm going to be surprised. And everybody out there, he was 41-40 for his career with a 3.15 ERA. I don't know. And listen, before I begin anything, I think I'll come back to him next week and do a little bit more why he was in this or made the cover of Wheaties. We'll have a little fun with that. And I'd like to leave it off there with him. And then you have Charlie Gurringer, Lefty Grove. Billy Herman made the team. Billy Herman is one of those cusp players. I'm going to look him up real quick. Billy Herman had some really good stats. Ready for this? Has a 57 WAR. So he's up there with some of the Hall of Famers. Hit 304 lifetime. Was a punch and Judy hitter, to be fair. Only 47 lifetime home runs. But here's what he did. Of course, hit 314, 303, 341, 334, 335. Would you consider him, never hit more than 7 home runs in a season. But me saying that wasn't like he had 57 doubles and led the league with doubles and hits, 227 in 1935 when he made the All-Star team for the Cubbies with 6 triples. He hit 341 that year. Then he had 211 hits the following year. Again, 57 doubles, 7 triples, 5 home runs, 93 RBIs, 334. So he's one of those, I don't know how you would consider him. Punch and Judy, probably you might consider him a Dustin Pedroia type of player. Is he Hall of Fame? Well, put it this way. The writers at the time have him in the top 10 in the MVP 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. He makes the All-Star team. Now, remember, first All-Star game was 33. He made the All-Star team 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. And he finished out of the top 10 2 other times with the MVP, finishing 11th in 1941 and 31st in 1939. He does make the Hall of Fame with the 57-2. I know, though, he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. He may have made it on the veterans, but I'm glad that he is in it. But Billy Herman is one of those players you never really hear about. He's not up there with, the greats, but man, what a career he had. And then last thing, and then I'm going to go, and we can continue this. Of course, Muhammad Ali made the cover. Barry Bonds, Tony Dorsett, Althea Gibson. Right? It seemed like from a run from 2001 all the way to they did a sampling of players. You had pole vaulters, Pete Sampras for tennis, Barry Bonds for baseball, Dorsett for football, Althea Gibson for tennis, and then Jim Thorpe. Jim Thorpe, one of our great, if not probably the greatest all-around athlete in the history of American sports. You could argue that. Track and field, football, and baseball. And I'm sure if basketball was at the time, he would have been great. And just a great all-round athlete is Jim Thorpe. And Wheaties made him the cover in 2001. This is Will O'Toole for Park Ridge Sports History. Hey, listen, I went 11 minutes over what I intended. Thank you for listening and joining us for the discussion on Wheaties box covers. I'll see you next week with another episode. Bye now.